he had a science teacher who forced him to take them because he thought it was just, too much studying, too much work. And he ended up taking them and doing quite well, and then going to the engineering school and other teachers pressing him very hard. And he started to learn the gratification that comes from being part of doing something distinct. And then he went on to take on huge challenges and became one of the great CEOs of the pharmaceutical world. He's known as a turnaround specialist, and he turned around Pharmacia, then Schering Plough. Schering Plough was almost shut down. We forget now, but only about 7-8 years ago, the FDA was going to shut Schering Plough, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, down because of quality control problems in their production line. So, he turned that around. That was just sold to Merck, so now he's in charge. He's now chairman of Bausch & Lomb, and he's turning that around. So, and I asked him, he gets such gratification from teaching other people the things that were taught to him. So, we're not isolated beings. We are people who get our experience of life and our experiences of who we are from the reflection in other people's eyes. So that's why people are these ever-growing, ever-wanting to rise higher beings, because we want to get that taste from seeing in other people's eyes, wow, that's impressive. You just did something important and helpful and meaningful. And we all want to matter. We share that.
Yeah. And years ago I read a book. The first sentence was, "It's not about you." And that doesn't really completely capture the subservience to purpose, but it's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, no, if you're looking for something that we all have in common, because every one of the enterprises that these CEOs lead are global. They go across cultures and countries and ethnicities, but every human being on the planet throughout history has had a innately, deeply rooted need to matter. That when they wake up in the morning, that their stepping out of bed makes a difference in the world, and the single biggest cause of depression is exactly that, and happiness, which is if you get out of bed feeling like what you do matters. There's this great story of this snowstorm. I was one of the people I was looking at was Herb Kelleher, who founded and was CEO of Southwest Airlines, and still chairman, even though he's 81. But he created this airline. It's the only airline that makes profit every quarter and has since its inception. And it keeps going. It's just a machine. And why does it keep going? I remember hearing about how in Buffalo, New York, there was a snowstorm, and all the flights were canceled. This is about 4 years ago, except for one airline was getting flights out, and I knew before even reading it who it would be. It was Southwest. So you look into why. Well, the people who are in charge of getting the runways ready and the planes ready and de-iced and all the equipment checked and rechecked from icing effects actually got out of bed at 2 a.m. They called each other, and why? And no other airline, gave a darn enough to make that extra effort. And why do Southwest employees outperform their competitors on every productivity metric? If you talk to them, they believe that their job matters, that actually getting those airplanes out makes a meaningful, positive difference in the world, that the person that's getting on that airplane is not just another person, it's somebody's grandmother trying to get to their grandson's first birthday, and that the bag or the suitcase that the baggage handler is putting on the ramp isn't just another suitcase, but it's somebody's insulin. So, and more than anything, they believe that this world shouldn't be reserved, that not only the rich should be the ones that are allowed to go see their loved ones, that everyone should have the opportunity to go see their loved ones or their kids or even start a business, that not just the rich should have an opportunity to fly. So they always focus on making sure that they give people an opportunity to do that and do it in an affordable way. And they believe that that's something that matters to the world. So you have an entire organization of 30,000, 40,000 plus people who deeply believe in what they're doing, and then you look at the effect that has on stock, on profits. It doesn't. It's sort of as a side effect. Making money is not enough to get people getting out of bed every day with more vigor than their competitors. And if you're not looking for a way to compete and get an edge over your competitors today, you will not exist tomorrow.
Yeah, I love how you talk about the virtuous cycle. People need to read the book to learn about that because it does build. You know, I've got 2 teenage sons and now an 11-year-old daughter, and all 3 of them are keepers in soccer. And I'm continually amazed, Justin, how much of sports comes down to what's between the ears, you know, how we think. And we've seen some goalkeepers make a mistake, and all of a sudden it's not the virtual cycle, it's a downward spiral, and it ends up leading to more mistakes. And I thought of that in your discussion about affect tolerance, and you referred to that earlier in our discussion. So for those of us that didn't study this in school, you know, what is affect tolerance, and how does that play into our ability to look difficulties in the face?
Yeah, I mean, it's really so much about actually having the experience of failure. I love this. You know, it's a little bit cliche, and it shows sort of my dated, older nature for maybe some of your audience. But there was a commercial, a Nike commercial that Michael Jordan did while he was still playing basketball that I'll never forget. And he talked about how many game-winning shots he'd missed, how many times he turned the ball over and lost a game for his team, and I mean, just listed every failure he had in his life. And then he said, and then they showed how many rings he had, and he said, I win, I succeed because I'm willing to try and risk failing. I mean, that every human being fails. It's not about failure. We expect to, we inevitably will. It's about what you do after that.
Yeah. You know, you've had an enormous blessing of interacting with some of the great leaders of our time, and I'd have to think that learning by their example does more than any business book, like you've mentioned, could teach. And you've excelled at identifying those characteristics that predict their fit within an organization. But I've learned there's times where I have trouble practicing what I preach, so to speak. So of all that you write and teach about and that you've learned, what is it that you struggle with yourself, Justin, when you have to lead under pressure?
You know, I want to make sure that I have a sort of, desire to get as much done as I can and balance. I think that I have probably what is not as unique or maybe as interesting a challenge as you might hope for the interview. It's probably the most common thing in the world, which is, I want to be everywhere and do everything. And there's not enough time, not enough space, not enough hours in the day, and if I never had to sleep, that would be ideal. So I have the same challenges that everybody else does, which is that it's a very high competitive world with lots of things to do, but within it is a tremendous continual set of opportunities. So I struggle with that of keeping some sort of staying connected to people I want to stay connected to, and professionally expanding at the rate I want to keep expanding.
Yeah. I'd have to say for me, Justin, it's I know better, but it's so easy to jump into victim mode, and or to jump into whining. So I try to catch myself when I'm in that state of like, all right, enough whining. I might even be right. People will agree with me, but it fixes nothing, and try to turn it into action. And
I think knowing yourself, though, right there is just huge, because what happens is I think people have to sort of stop and say, and what I try to do in this book is de-hero-fy, take away the hero complex of these great CEOs, that each one has issues exactly like that. But what they do is they understand they're human beings, and they have somebody that they can trust, that they then channel all that stuff to. So if you have a thing about whining, then you know that you can, whether it's your wife or your girlfriend or your whoever, your best friend, you call them and you say, now I'm about to whine to you for 10 minutes because I can't whine to my team. I can't let them see that.
Yeah, I like that. I also liked what you had in the book from Miles White from Abbott, I seem to recall, of don't have thick skin, have thin skin. So when they actually tell you, you're sensitive enough to understand it and do something about it. So, Yeah, Justin, I want to thank you for spending time with us today. For aspiring CEOs or anyone looking just to bring out the best in yourself and those around you, I recommend you get a copy of Justin's latest book, Better Under Pressure. You can find links to the book and other resources in the show notes for this cast. Justin, thank you for joining us today on the People and Projects podcast.
Glad to do it. Thank you.
Well, make sure to check out the links in the show notes to get your copy of Better Under Pressure. I've also put a link to the book's website to learn more. One way to develop your ability to lead under pressure is to join me in next year's Leadership Fast Track program. This year's program is wrapping up this month, and I've greatly enjoyed the process of helping this group of leaders from multiple continents grow in their ability to lead and deliver. You know what? By joining the Leadership Fast Track program, you'll join me in a series of learning sessions and assessments and one-on-one coaching. And though it doesn't start up again until next year, now's a great time to start looking into the program and getting it on your development plan for next year. So check out the show notes for details. Well, thank you for joining me for this episode of the People and Projects Podcast. Have a great week.
It's been, crazy, busy year, so we're all hoping that it continues to be that way, but with the volatility in the market, one never knows, but it's been crazy busy, and but we're hanging in there. How you doing?
Well, again, in fact, you know what? It's one thing to write about better under pressure. I guess it's good to have to live it too, right?
Yeah, I agree.
All right, that is our wrap. Well, you know what? I appreciate you starting your day with us here.
I appreciate it, Andy.
Have a good one, man. See ya.